Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to today's session called How to Be Closer to Your Own Citizens, Civic Tech Tools in Action. We will be running the session in English because we have distinguished international guests that we will introduce you to in no time. In this discussion, we will cover the topic and a field of, in general, engagement platforms, civic tech, e-participation platforms. We will talk about trends. If 2025, we will talk about AI. We will talk about what is going on, not just in Central Eastern European level, but in the European context. And with one of our colleagues from Ukraine, we will also discuss the unique role of civic tech that it is playing during the wartime. Before we start, let me just introduce you to us, the moderators. My name is Tomáš Rákos. I'm a CEO of Participation Factory. We are a social enterprise dedicated to mainstreaming participation in civic tech, especially in the public sector. With me here is my colleague Katja Petrikevich, who is the International Director of Participation Factory. And most importantly, she has helped us to develop the first ever civic tech market report that we published last year. And the market report itself, which is a catalog of tools that are being active and used on the European market. So this is going to be sort of a baseline for our today's conversation. Katja?
Thank you so much, Tom, for giving us the presentation. I would like to speak very briefly about the work that we do as Participation Factory to also give a context of why we are doing this event. So basically, we are a social enterprise that is working in the field of participation in person and online with more than 200 projects behind our back. And as Tom already mentioned, one of the things that we've done is publishing the Civic Tech Market Report. We looked into what kind of solutions are available on the European market, what are the current trends, what are the key challenges, and that's the basic for our conversation today. We also worked with People Powered, that Tom also mentioned, a network organization that also looks into what kind of civic tech solutions are existing internationally, and we've been supporting their efforts in creating what they call digital participation platforms ratings for the last 4 years. Now, without further ado, I want to present our speakers. We have Adrien Duguay, President of Association Civic Tech Europe, Akci. We have Emile Heymans from Go Vocal and Jens Kimmel from Consul Democracy. And last but not least, Tamara Tachynska from Kela. We've already had some preliminary discussions with our speakers in order to get to the core of the conversation, because we have 60 minutes only, and we want to make sure that we dive right into the meaty questions that we have about civic tech. But before I pass on the mic to our speakers, I want to briefly contextualize what we mean by civic tech. Civic technology is, as you can see on the map behind me, is a booming industry and a booming ecosystem with thousands of different solutions around the world that are facilitating some sort of interaction between government entities and local communities. When you try to make sense out of what civic tech or digital participation ecosystem includes and involves, you can think of democracy technology, or technology that helps to maintain and improve democratic institutions, including electronic elections that exist, for example, in Estonia. You can think of, and we're going to focus on more, engagement technology or participation technology, or tools that are specifically tailored to focus on interaction between government entities, local communities, and local stakeholders. The processes in which civic tech can be used are varied, and this is just a snapshot of a few things, including local planning, local participatory budgeting, or budgeting activities, etc., etc. From the functionalities that we have, citizens could be familiar with surveying, polling, reporting issues. If you've ever done any of those things online, most likely you've worked with civic tech. And very briefly, obviously there are different levels of infiltration of civic tech in different markets. As you can see also behind me, based on the Civic Tech report, the markets that are most targeted are US, France, United Kingdom, Germany, Canada. And when it comes to the Czech Republic, it's not lagging behind, it's just not there because it's not at the top at the moment. But the civic tech market is growing and booming, and there are a lot of different solutions developed in Czech Republic itself. The issue that we're facing at the moment is that very little input from abroad, very little international practices and European standards are coming into Czech Republic. And that's why we're having this panel, to bring in the international perspective, to talk about best practices and also frameworks that exist already. And with this, I'm going to pass on the word to our first speaker.
Okay. Let me give a word first to Adrien Duguay, the head of Akci, Association Civic Tech of Europe. Akci has been established in 2019. It's first European umbrella organization representing civic tech companies. Try to give them a voice and represents them across the institutions of European Union. When we talked to Adrien, he mentioned few things, and let me just put them out there, and then I would love to hear your reaction. We all agree that the civic tech segment market field is growing rapidly. We see many and many new products and companies coming up. We also see, as Adrien says, utter need for standardization and some type of rules in order to help the whole market. We also see, obviously, a big growth of AI that is influencing the whole e-participation engagement platform and civic tech ecosystem. And last but not least, the whole ecosystem definitely needs to learn how to interoperate, either if it's open source tools or other products available. That's just an introduction, and I would love to give a word to Adrien to kind of elaborate where we are in 2025 with the civic tech engagement platforms and the whole ecosystem, and what are the challenges.
Thanks, Thomas. How long do I have?
8 minutes.
8 minutes, because I know that Thomas is very strict on the minutes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Very, very happy to be here. Special thanks to Participation Factories and the Urbis conference to organize this kind of stage. I have to say that it's quite rare, actually, to have this kind of panel in this kind of room when we have to talk about civic tech and the civic tech ecosystem. So as you said, civic tech market is absolutely on the rise, but the situation today is quite particular. And before answering all the trends and getting into more techniques and technical details, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are at a critical point right now in Europe regarding civic tech market. Why? The question is, why are we involved in developing tools for civic tech? Through civic tech, we are trying to empower citizens, to give them more leverages to engage in society, and ultimately, we are here to strengthen democratic processes and institutions. The main problem, and we have not to be afraid of words, is that today in Europe, democracy is under attack. There are many kind of attacks. It's really hybrid attacks. Attacks on the civic space through disinformation, polarizations, attacks to electoral processes with manipulations of different levels, and also attacks to the idea that citizens can have an true and efficient impact, and they can take part into society. And there are many reasons. Some are external, some are internal of the European Union. I'm stressing this particular point because we are at a moment where we also know, because we have a 15 years, I would say, feedbacks and experience into the civic tech ecosystem, and we know that there is no one answer, one unique answer to the democracy crisis. It has to be multiple answer because the society today, the citizens are split, the community are widespread, and the expectations of citizens are very different. It's true at the national level, it's even more true at the European level. So, multiple expectations, multiple challenges, it means multiple solutions and dedicated solutions. And as civic tech professionals and providers and developers, our job is to find and assess and propose solutions to particular problem, which can be, of course, increasing local citizen participation, creating new spaces for citizen deliberation and participation, but also beyond. And you know that I love to say that civic tech, as you say, many tools and many use cases, but it has also to be considered in a broad way because civic tech is about citizen engagement, and it means that when a citizen is involved in the political process, when it is involved in a campaign, when it is involved with a non-profit, with an organization, and overall when it is involved in the life of the community, we also have to provide tools and methodologies to make it more efficient. Deliberation, citizen participation, campaigning management, community management, are all different approaches of one same issue, which is citizen engagement into society. So this is for my introduction, but now we can get into detail.
I am really curious, let me just have a follow-up question. I'm really curious from your point of view, what are the trends in 2025?
In 2025, there are, I would say, three main trends. The first trend is that after years of commitment and highlighting the work of the ecosystems, I have the feeling that stakeholders, municipalities, states, organizations are more and more aware of the existence of civic tech solutions and the opportunities they can get for it. So there is a real consideration of the ecosystem, and to share a very concrete example with you, when we arrived 5 years ago in Brussels and tried to advocate for the sector, no one was even understanding the word. Civic tech is not easy to spell, I guess, but now, after 5 years, we have experience, we have feedback, and institutional understanding. Second trend, of course, since 2022 especially, is that we are welcoming a new technological revolutions, which is AI, and the direct issue that we have to tackle is, okay, we have AI, but what does it mean to apply AI on democracy use cases? What do we do with AI? How do we guarantee that AI will be part of the solutions to highlight and strengthen the democracy and make it more transparent and more relevant for citizens? And finally, it's also to follow up on this, but of course we have this trend between providers, between professionals, of interoperability between solutions, because as I mentioned, we understood that locally or nationally, you don't have one tools that will solve every problem, but that the solution is also by having different tools and approaches, and by making interoperability, between them.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sure that we will touch the issue of AI further with other guest speakers, but I would like to give a word to Katja.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrienne. Thank you so much, Tomáš. We are going to move to a different conversation and talk about designing solutions for diversity, civic tech that provide solutions from A to Z. And Emile Heymans from Go Vocal is going to talk about it. And briefly, just to tell you a little bit about Go Vocal, it's a certified B corporation on a mission to make public decision-making more accessible, more diverse, and more inclusive. Go Vocal has already worked with over 500 different municipalities and localities all around the world, not only in Europe. So the experience is definitely broadly international. And during our first conversation that we had with Emile already, we talked about the fact that the core challenge today for civic tech is not necessarily the technology, but the process around it, and that a lot of the challenges with the process are connected to political decisions on how to design the process and what level of engagement to allow citizens to have. Another point that we talked about and that kind of reflects what Adrienne already started saying about proliferation of civic tech. Emile mentioned that we're moving away from this idea that civic tech is a magic wand that can solve all problems, and that government organizations are starting to think about digital participation and digital tools as something that is more long-term serving, something that requires a more time commitment and engagement. Obviously, the topic of AI also came up. I think this is going to be a recurring thing, but AI and NLP, which is natural language processing, is something that can help to unify online and offline engagement, and I think we would love to hear more about how exactly it works with GoVocal. And obviously, as already been touched, participation and engagement should be a recurring process. That's something that we've touched with Emile a lot, and that's something that we would like to cover in the session. So Emile, you have the floor.
Thank you, Katja. Thanks. I think where I want to start is from the 10 years of experience that GoVocal did in community engagement, starting in Belgium in the early days. We had to convince municipalities of the why, and all the conversations that we were having were about the why. They were about why should we do participation per se. We had elections, citizens voted, now I have a program, I'm just going to roll out. And this is a narrative that we still hear a lot. But less and less, and I think the conversation that we're having now is about the how, much more than it is about the why. And when we're talking about the how, one of the first questions that comes up is the inclusivity question, because we're all trying to reach to the voices that we never heard of, or to trying to expand the conversation beyond the same 10 people that are showing up at the town hall on a Tuesday evening, which, by the way, is not my case, and I guess it's probably not your case either. So how do we expand that conversation? And I think there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. I think the barriers to participation are as much on the civic tech side as it is on the administration side in the choice that they make in how they design the process. And there are a couple of examples that I want to share to make it very concrete, which is one fear that we have that we hear a lot from politicians is how can we verify that participants are actually the one that they pretend to be? Of course, there are different ways to register, there's different ways to validate that information, and we can also integrate that with various national apps which verify your identity online, etc. But is that something you wish to do? Because that creates an extra barrier for people to participate is a major question. And there's just one example of how you can make choices that will have an influence on the participative process afterwards. One other thing that maybe is from a design perspective as tool provider, which is important to consider, is the idea to design for the edges and not for the average, meaning that you need to think when you design a tool of what are the edge cases of someone who is not familiar with digital tools or used to different ways of connecting with the municipality, to try to include them in the process. And then we talk about blending online and offline participation. Then we talk about making sure that your tool is accessible for people who have difficulty to read or understand or navigate stuff online, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's the introduction that I wanted to share, but yeah.
Perfect, thank you so much. I'm actually really curious about the statement that you made about designing for the edges, not the average. Could you maybe provide some concrete examples of how it works in practice to kind of like contextualize it a little bit?
Yeah. I think one edge that we realized was I'm bringing it back to registration, but it's a big topic because some people, for example, have the registration is a big barrier sometimes online, and allowing for cities to choose for a flexible registration method, just validating an email or no registration at all, really reduces the barrier, because then you can just participate without having to create a full profile, which is important online. And also even anonymity, so be able to participate with, yeah, obviously if you don't register, there's a lot of chances that it's going to be anonymous. So that's one thing. I think if I need to think about another case, I would definitely say that blending online and offline is the most important story, which is one case that we developed recently is the possibility for participants to fill in a form on a paper, scan this form, and merge this with data that you collect online. So think of an input form online that is exactly the same as a PDF that people can fill in, and then you can analyze that data through one central platform, and that allows you to reach to these edges and design a process that is built for that edge.
I think this is really exciting. I have one maybe last question before we move on. Because in our previous discussion, we also touched on the AI and the NLP. So maybe if you could give a few thoughts on how it's currently being used, also just for the audience to understand a bit better what are the opportunities that comes with AI.
I'm sure our colleagues will have many inputs to share on AI as well, but I think for me the biggest, in a nutshell, the biggest opportunity right now that is directly usable is if you design a process where you collect inputs on a large scale, hundreds, thousands. Most of our clients that did this up to the AI age were looking at inputs on an Excel sheet and trying to find for keywords to try to understand what were the insights that they could get from all these contributions, all these ideas from residents. And today the tool allows you to instantly understand what residents are actually saying, because it connects to that sample of data, links insights to specific demographic criteria, summarizes it. You can even ask questions. And so that's really unlocking something completely new for the industry, which was very difficult to do, understanding large pool of qualitative data. And right now we're unlocking this, which is very exciting.
First of all, thank you on behalf of people who do work with a lot of data for developing this kind of solutions. They are very much needed, and I think people who work with participation, especially offline, would really appreciate those kind of solutions. And thank you for the intervention. I'll pass the word to Tomáš to present our next speaker.
Thank you so much. The discussion is becoming very nerdy, but I hope that you are all enjoying it. Next, I would love to ask Jens Kimmel. Jens Kimmel is representing, he's a network coordinator for at Consul Democracy. For those who you don't know, Consul Democracy is a global open source initiative supporting governments and everyone else who would like to enhance public participation and direct democracy through open source tools. The Consul Democracy has an award-winning platform, Consul, the project that has been deployed in over 35 countries, in cities and other institutions, and it definitely is same as Go Vocal, one of the superstars of civic tech ecosystem in Europe. Welcome, Jens. What I'm interested in, when we talked, you emphasized obviously that the principle of participation is a public good, and that we should be very careful how we treat citizen engagement and public and participation. And you also mentioned that we should be very careful who we outsource the participation through, if it's a private companies and what companies and so on and so on. And obviously at this issue, or for this issue, the open source products and solutions are crucial. for success of that. Obviously, running and having an open source product is not effortless. It comes with also a lot of headaches. It's not, perfect solution. Could you tell us, also give you your overview where we are in 2025 when it comes to participation and engagements, platforms and tools here in Europe, and how open source is doing, what the trends are, and where are we heading?
That's a big question.
You have 8 minutes.
8 minutes. So yeah, I mean, I can speak, I don't think I can speak for the entire open source market or sector, but I'll try to speak for the open source area of the participation space, of which Consul Democracy is a part. And I think not only Consul Democracy, so there's a couple other open source providers of participation solutions like Decidim, Your Priorities, etc. And I think that we are a little bit, we share some things that make us a little bit different than proprietary solutions, in the sense that most of these solutions were not developed by companies, but they're developed by either civil society organizations or public organizations and governments, local governments themselves. So you can say that open source solutions are solutions made by public organizations for public organizations. So in the case of Consul, it was the city of Madrid. In the case of Decidim, it was Barcelona, as we all know. In the case of Your Priorities, it was a coalition of parties in Iceland after the banking crisis in 2007, 2008, where a massive social movement came and said we need democratic innovation because we cannot go on anymore, and we need tools for that. One of them was. I think this is also the point where I see a lot of this started. So back in, let's say, 10, 12 years ago, there was a huge uptake of the development of open source solutions for democratic innovation, let's say, and this area has been developing, not without its challenges, but I think I will dive into the specific challenges a little bit later. Let me highlight a few advantages that I think are relevant to stress now when it comes to open source technology. So the first thing I think that for the most part use of open source solutions is free. This is not applicable to all, of course, and there's gradations in everything. Sometimes you have to pay for premium features, etc. But our conviction is at least that participatory processes in democratic innovation should not be too expensive, so that also it's available to those with limited resources, smaller cities, small local governments also in Czech Republic probably, so that they can also implement these solutions. Second one I think is important is to stress is transparency of the technology, especially when you are talking about civic tech, that plays an important role, an increasingly important role in public affairs. And I think the technologies that you use in the public domain, I think it's good to make those technologies as transparent as possible, because that is, a public value of the public sector, right? So another one is, I think is that's the last one, reusability. So technology is very different than physical infrastructure, of course, that we all know that if you want to build the next road, every other road will cost a fortune. Whereas when you have developed a technology, replicating that technology is in principle against very little cost. So why don't we, right? So if we make it as transparent as possible and open source, we can replicate the technology that we have developed and make it available very widely.
I have a follow-up question. You mentioned open source, for participation open source platforms, perhaps implemented and used here in the Czech Republic. We are sitting in the city of Brno, literally in the heart of Europe, and kind of gateway to Central and Eastern Europe. And to be perfectly honest, we don't really see that much of a use of open source engagement platforms used by local governments, regional governments, and others.
Let's change it.
We know that in Western Europe, it's obviously being used way more. Why do you think it is as it is? Why in places like Germany, Benelux, Spain, Italy, the open source engagement platforms are being used so much more than here in Central and Eastern Europe?
I don't know if that's necessarily true, because, I mean, speaking from our experience and user base and knowing a little bit about decidiums, I think we have quite some activity in Slovenia, Romania, Croatia, Greece. We're starting to have some traction there, and I know that decidim, has instances in Bulgaria, for example.
That's Balkans.
Central and Eastern Europe. Is it too south? Yeah. Sorry for my ignorance. But anyways, does Slovenia, Romania count?
How is culture influencing use of open source tools? Like, is there any impact of, I don't know, society development, culture? I'm just trying to decode it, if you could give a brief answer.
Sorry, I didn't get the first part of your question.
If the culture of the society is actually influencing how, open source tools are being used.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a strong civil society is something very important. So we see that civil society actors take a lead role in, developing further, customizing, building on the open source solutions that are already there. So the countries that I mentioned that we are active in Romania and Slovenia, for example, we're working directly with civil society partners there who have picked up on, the code, started to work with it, made a copy, customized it on the basis of the demands by the cities that they're working with. So civil society partners and activity, a strong civil society is I think one of the crucial, one of the keys here. Yeah, let me let me leave it at that. I have to think about this a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. Katja?
So thank you again, Jens. And we're gonna move to our last speaker, last but not least, of course. It's Tamara Tachynska, CEO of Kela from Ukraine. She built Kela as a response to a challenge that's been seen again and again, that civic leaders and communities need better tools, not just to communicate, but organize, sustain engagement, and mobilize communities. And Kela is a gamified community builder designed to basically do exactly that and provide communities, movements, and civic organizations that want to turn passive followers into active supporters and actively engaged citizens. We talked about the fact that technology alone is not enough, and I think we are echoing it throughout our whole conversation, which I always find fascinating, that in talks of technology, we end up talking about process design and smart things like project management, culture shift, and new processes being established. We also need educated and empowered citizens who are key to successful processes and successful engagement. People need to understand what they're being asked for and why, so that they can react to it in a proper way. And obviously, the strong communities are the baseline for resilience, for democracy, and communities in crisis. As Tamara is coming from Ukraine, during the wartime, Kela proves to be a tool that is capable of supporting the resilience of Ukrainian political and social system. They run multiple fantastic projects that I would like to mention. One of them is integration of war veterans in social life by reintroducing them into social and political activities through Kela. There is also an effort to provide community building to Ukrainians who are currently living abroad because of the war in order to support the cohesion of Ukrainian community. And also I know that Kela is also providing some capacity building to local communities in order to ensure their resilience in this hard times. So I'll give you a word to react to all of those points or any, and to expand a bit more on the work that you're doing with Kela.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm proud to be here. This is my first time in Czechia and in Brno. It's beautiful, and I feel like some connection. It's not just words it's really we feel it with my team, and actually Kela was a response to what we saw and what we see as an answer how to get people the feeling of agency, get back the feeling of agency. It is about resistance of any community, and what we see, I believe, it is common feeling in the society where over there are politicians, over there are some leaders, and here is citizens, and that people don't consider themselves as citizens. They consider themselves, I'm a mother, I'm an IT professional, I'm a, I don't know, beer lover or something like that. They are not, it's not like a mindset of I am a citizen. I am responsible for my community, I am responsible for the future of my country, I am responsible for... so when we ask people to come to an election or to participate in any municipality program, any local discussions, some of them feel irrelevant to that. Who I am to answer it, I'm not interested, I don't understand why it is important, and so on and so forth. So to get back to the feeling of agency, and we created a solution that allows any community leader to suggest people to participate in what is like affordable for them in terms of time, in terms of attention, in terms of the feeling that, yeah, I cannot attend your, assembly somewhere in Kiev, but I can read your article and pass your quizzes on the course sitting in Lviv. So I feel like I can contribute, and we suggest to give people these different ways of contribution. We did not invent it, and actually Kela is not in invention and is not uniqueness in terms of the specific functionality, but the uniqueness of how we combine it. So my experience, I'm a communication strategist, and what I see it should be a loop of feedback. And when we are saying about the loop of feedback, we should educate people on something, then we suggest them how can they be related to it, then we get their feedback first, then we do what they voted for, and they feel like, okay, my voting was not useless. I'm not talking about election, I'm talking about the smaller choices. And when it comes to then we give them what they wanted, what they voted for, or we give them the activity they wanted to participate. And when we repeat this cycle again and again, we see that people just see, okay, I can participate this way or that way. When it comes to election, which is inevitable in democratic, they feel like I am deciding what my future should be and the future of my community, not someone else. And they are more educated about what choice they have made. Because mostly, and I know for sure, I've spoken with many professionals who was working with political literacy. They try and convince people, please read the program before vote. And it is not a habit, actually, to read the program. It is not a habit to dive in to the suggestion, like what Emile is doing with their program. So you have to dive in and understand why we are making this choice. So in terms of resilient community, what changed in Ukraine, and I repeated myself, people stopped thinking that I'm irrelevant. They understand no one except me can help me and help others who is around me. And this is the mood in Ukraine. It is, yes, without that we will not survive. And we are not, waiting what our authorities will actually say about it or something like that. It's the opposite. And what you mentioned already, tool is not an answer. The feeling of ownership is an answer, and we can create the feeling of ownership with any tool. Collaboration is an answer, and strategy is an answer. I can go on and on, but please pause me, and let's answer.
Yeah. No, you're doing an amazing work, and I just wanted to ask a question on, because you touched on it, about building trust within the community. Yeah. What are kind of first steps do you do to build trust, not only from citizens in your tool, but also from government officials in your tool? Like, what kind of processes or like methods do you apply in order to launch these conversations?
I believe government officials in any country, they are very suspicious in terms of new tools, and they wanted to see, do you have any success case? If you have, we will repeat it. If not, we are okay with Google spreadsheets, we are happy with it, and something like that. So yeah, it is about piloting projects. It's about showing them that how you can like duplicate the success of any case, and also everyone. It's funny, but everyone understands how the politician campaign works. But usually, any politician campaign lasts 3 months. I mean, active politician campaign. Between elections, nothing happening. Community doesn't matter, so they're just no one will approaching them, and so on and so forth. But you can explain how it works based on the common understanding how political campaign is working. So you can project it for the longer time and not losing community after the election is ended. And here, it's very, you can show the vivid numbers. So before the election, you have them 3,000 people engaged in your core activity. After, you can have more, and when the next election will happen, you don't have to mobilize people from the scratch. And actually, any campaign is campaign. I mean, I'm not talking about political campaign. Anything is about communication, and action is a part of communication. So we have to put action more oftenly to communication campaign. So when it's just, and it applies to any initiatives. When it's about local government, usually what they launch, some ecological stuff, what we do with all of the cleanliness of our city, some youth engagement, some urbanistic engagement, and so on and so forth. And people love to have an opinion about it, but they don't know how they can apply this opinion, probably with their specifically hands, not only thoughts. So I definitely am advocate for collaboration in terms of when we are approaching new clients, we suggest them not only tool, but some experts to help, some best practices to be inspired of. This is kind of approach.
And I have last question before we move to the question and answers and open the floor to panelists to discuss what has been said, and also to the people in the audience. You also have projects that do not require local governments to manage the platform. You also have, from what I understand, projects that are driven by the community itself, by the movement, yeah, or civil society. What is the difference in those type of projects, and do they lead to the government jumping into those initiatives as well?
I would say we perceive government as, as someone. I'm trying to find the word. It's the same people with the same problem. I mean, it's not some others without. And the approach definitely the same. It's project-based approach. So in civil society, they are more probably flexible, and they can work with the budgeting, for instance, with fundraising. We have a community which was funded themselves with crowdfunding, with fundraising, with donation, and so on. It's easier on the one hand. for planning their expense. On the other hand, government has budget, and once they decided to spend this money, they will spend this money. So it's how to look at it. Nothing, I don't see the huge difference between, despite of, again, budgeting. Anything else is quite the same. And anything else, and actually, I believe government, actually this is my point, and I try to, again, repeat it. The gap between leaders, authorities, and citizens is too high, even in our mind. We believe like this is completely different people with different mindset, with different approaches and so on. It's not true. Especially in Ukraine, it became more horizontal, and people are more allowed to be engaged. And actually, after the Revolution of Dignity, a lot of people who stand on the street with all of that, they became actually government officials later. And it works good, because when you are government officials when your father was government official, your dad and grandfather, it should be changed. So it is about showing best practices, showing great cases to inspire people to change this perception.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tamara, for your presentation and for talking to us about the experience. I think we're gonna move on.
Thanks everyone for these reflections and interventions. We would like to open the floor to anyone who has a question. If you do have a question, just raise your hand. We can run and give you the microphone, but to bridge that moment of us asking and talking and perhaps you asking, I still have a follow-up question. Just to play devil's advocate, you said, Tamara, that citizens would like to, they enjoy giving a feedback and preference. What we hear quite often, especially from public officials and politicians, they say, oh, but here it's different. People don't like to be engaged, and oh, here in eastern part of this region or whatever, it's a different mentality and culture, and people don't like to participate. Here we have literally people who represent organizations that are active in dozens of countries. So I would like to ask all of you, is it true that people don't like to be engaged? Maybe go vocal. Let's start with Emile.
I love this question. I'm sure my colleagues will have many answers. I think for me, obviously there's the stereotype, but I think we need to ask ourselves, where does this stereotype comes from, probably? And I think it just comes down to the fact that people don't like to be engaged in the way it's been done before. And so we have a habit and a perception of engagement that is something that either doesn't work, either what am I going to get from it, and it's going to take my time, and I'm not even sure what the impact of my contribution is going to have on the ultimate decision. And so I think it's because even in the early days of participation, and we're still making these mistakes today, we often make mistakes when we do engagement because we just check the box, we do a survey, and then people share their ideas, and then often nothing happens, or there's no feedback loop and nothing. They don't know how their opinion has actually been taken into account. And so there's a lot of stuff to fix, obviously, to be able to increase the legitimacy and the interest. Yeah, but there's a lot to say on that.
Okay.
Since I'm having,
Yep.
I will
Sure.
look at social media. How many people spend hours to answer some posts, to comment on someone post? It is work, actually. I would pay for that. I mean, people spending their time and efforts and they thinking about it. People, definitely, we are social creatures. We love to be engaged in what we love to be engaged. But usually it's quite boring, that type of engaging that usually suggested to them. So you might be surprised, but probably not like seeing me and my team. We are people who love life in spite of the war, and we want to have fun despite of anything. And why people in any age actually would love to have some fun, but define fun for them specifically. Not, some reports.
I love this advice to the local governments and public sector. Stop being boring. There should be t-shirts made with that claim. Jens?
Just very shortly, following up on also what Emile said about consequentiality. Yeah, like if it has consequences, what you're doing, then people will be motivated to repeat their actions and be engaged. I'm totally convinced of that. And I'm not only working with Consul, but I'm also a citizen of Valencia in Spain, and there, as a matter of toeval, I forgot the word in English. But anyway, so there's a participation process as well, and participatory budgeting, and I'm with my neighbors. I'm also putting in proposals for, I'm also a citizen in this process, so I can also speak from that experience. And I remember, the project that me and a couple neighbors were submitting did not receive enough votes, so it was not implemented. But I voted on another great suggestion by someone who was living not so far away in my neighborhood, and I think an hour that's very fast. A year and a half later, the restructuring of the square in our neighborhood was done, by the municipality, and this was amazing, like, okay, so I see with my own eyes in my neighborhood what has been done, what we have changed, and let's repeat it, because let's go for the next cycle, because I can see with my own eyes what has changed.
Thank you. Adrien, would you like to add something?
Yes, and to answer your initial question, frankly, in many years, the sentence I have heard the most when I am entering a new project, talking with a new city or a new candidate is, oh, but here it is special. Every time. And it is, of course, true. In a certain extent, it's true inside a country. North of France, south of France, it's not the same, and it's true even more between countries. However, what is not that special, and this is why we are here, is that there are many ways to engage with citizens, many methodologies, and the goal is to find the proper way to engage with a proper audience and a proper local context. And I want to stress something. When I hear, especially, I would say, Emilian on the side and Tamara on the other side, you are talking about engagement. You are talking about meeting people's expectations, but actually you are not talking about exactly the same things. Because on the one hand, you are focusing on opening new spaces for people willing to contribute and collaborate with local authorities. For example, create a co-agenda for the coming years, or to establish, in some cases, laws, etc. And on the other hand, I understand that you are offering to people a way to engage with their own community. Which may be from time to time translated into a political agenda, etc., of course, but we are not talking about the same things. Meaning that the actions that you are proposing ultimately are not the same. On the one hand, you would propose, okay, it's of course much more complex than that, but you would say, okay, please share what's happening locally and what you would like to see in your street, for example. In the other hand, you will say, okay, how can I commit and power communication for my community, share tweets, etc., etc. My point is, and it's especially true for the municipality or maybe public authorities in the room, when you are entering the question of citizen engagement, please keep in mind that there are many ways to do so. Through community engagement, through stakeholders engagement, direct reach to citizens, through institutions, through deliberations, and even inside the countries and inside institutions, you all know that you are different, I would say, subfamilies. The elected official will say, okay, but we want to strengthen elective and representative democracy. And on the other hand, someone will say, okay, we want to support participation and participative democracy. So my point, to end it here, is try to have, when you're entering the topic, a comprehensive views of every dimensions of citizen engagements, and this is the only way to tackle local context.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question for the whole panel, and I would like to get back to the basically beginning of this panel, and talking about the civic tech, e-participation, e-participace, engagement tools, whatever you want to call it, and look at it as an ecosystem, as a market. Like we know for sure, there are literally dozens and dozens of products and solutions, open source, proprietary, right now operating within EU and surrounding countries, at least like in Europe. I really would like you to sort of think and tell us, because I'm sure that you have very strong opinions about it, where is the ecosystem going to be, let's say, in 2 or 3 years? Is the growth going to continue? Is there going to be some big changes related to AI? Is it going to mainstream like crazy, or are we facing some crisis coming up? Again, me being hypothetically city official, politician, you know, getting into that agenda, trying to plan for next 18, 24 months, what's going to happen? Like, I don't know of any better people to ask than you right now, right here. So maybe Adrian, do you want to continue?
Okay, on this question, even though with AI it's evolving so fast that probably that we will have some surprises. I see several trends and for the coming years. First, AI tools and also the better understanding of citizen participation methodologies enable finally to massify citizen engagement, and maybe even if I'm speaking at the level of the European deep European continent, be able to engage with millions and maybe dozens of millions of citizens at the same time. So the massification is for me the next step, and in 2, 3, 4 years we will probably be there. Secondly, I believe that most of the logistical parts of organizing a consultation, choosing the tools, etc., maybe in the near future, I would say, facilitated by AI agents. And I believe, and we see today, and there are some people in the room also working on it, but the next generations of civic tech, AI first, designing, rethinking the processes with more automatization, more inclusions, and more, I would say, the personalized approach. With finally, made me think about a third point, which is that we will be able, probably in the coming years, to personalize and to, I would say, bring to the people what they expect and give to each person a way to act, a personalized way to act.
Okay, Tamara, what do you see?
In terms of trends, I have like 2 ways to end up with all of it. Either authoritarians will take over and we will be useless. They're not into civic engagement at all. Or we have no other choice than push it forward, because we want democracy will win, and people again define democracy because no one actually know what is it. I mean, how people influence their future. It's some philosophical topics, not practical topic. So we have to introduce people to democracy, to fight to and defeat autocracy and all of this what is going on in the world.
Thank you.
Maybe if I can quickly add, I think, like I said at the start, the age of the why should we do participation is long gone and long past. It's really about the how right now, and we're having, there's a huge momentum in this space. And I think there's some fears that now arise largely driven by what we're seeing on the other side of the Atlantic, that sparks a bit of shadow on the field and on its future. But what our experience in the US is that for local governments, for example, this narrative remains really, really strong, and is even adopted by some, let's say, more conservative regional or strongholds in a different way, but they adjust it. And so I'm 100% convinced that this is just there's a big momentum and a big future.
Thank you. Jens?
Yeah, first I thought it's too big for me to answer this question, but since you are now, both of you two have been mentioning, authoritarianism and, Trump being elected and all his authoritarian and kind of actions that are taking place there. I think it has a weirdly, it has a kind of motivating effect on, realizing that technological independence or digital autonomy or whatever you want to call it is actually something very important for Europe to do, and not be dependent on Silicon Valley solutions that are highly intertwined with the authoritarian regimes, or let's say growing authoritarian regimes in the case of the US. This is happening, and you see like a growing realization also among policymakers and administrations that it's important to grow, or to foster, harness, and grow national and European civic tech industries, open source or not. It's important to have it in the continent. So I think I actually see this as a huge boost for our work. Yeah, it's a weird sort of positive by effect for what we are doing.
Thank you so much. Is there any? We have 5 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, let me run with the microphone.
Hi, thanks so much for the talk. It was really insightful. But and I'm going to nerd out a little bit more here, since you guys are here. What about some planetary, transnational participation? Because we're dealing with things like climate change, AI. I mean, these are huge things that are going to, involve almost everybody or change in their lives. And yet we're doing it nationally, maybe EU-wide. But do you see any trends in this kind of movement that we could actually facilitate it on this level? Thanks.
Just start. I was mentioning massification of engagement, ability to engage millions of citizens, and it of course includes transnational consultations and transnational initiatives, and this is especially possible, I would say, because of AI. So because of our new ability to aggregate, understand a lot of data, and then ultimately the will of a lot of citizens. And we can imagine this within the European Union, which is also these days a big topic at the EU level. And one day we can also imagine this between continents. And I have already this example that comes to my mind. But for example, last year when the European Union was negotiating the bilateral treaty with Canada, trade treaties, etc., it would have worse transcontinental consultations between Canadians and Europeans about this kind of agreement. So yes, these are new borders and opportunities.
I would say that anyway we have to eat this elephant piece by piece. So despite of the topic is very, very huge, I mean environment and climate change actually is about everyone, but on the ground we cannot process it globally. We have to approach it, locally. So I feel and I think that on the one hand education should be global, but action should be local, and that's in terms of analyzing data globally. That's what Adrian said. That will help a lot from massificated. But again, we will not avoid localization. So let's not hope for that. It's not possible, I believe, so far.
Yeah, I think what I want to answer to this question is the civic tech answer is the tool answer, is the how answer, but then for transnational consultation to happen, it first starts from an organization that has the legitimacy to or ask people in different nationalities or involve them in some sort of process. It doesn't need to be a formal organization. It can be a citizen movement. We've had, consultations with transnational NGOs or movements like Youth for Climate, which essentially, as an example, then it translates into recommendations that are there, that are then shared at to various political levels, on national levels, on EU levels, by this EU Youth for Climate movement. So that's That's one thing, but I think it needs to come from the ground first, and then the civic tech is just what allows for that to actually take shape.
Want to add? Fine. Okay, we're heading towards the end.
So we are running, as Tom said, out of time, and I just wanted to say thank you to all of the speakers for those brilliant interventions that are definitely useful for the conversation around civic tech in Central Eastern Europe, but also in Europe at large and beyond, as our participant mentioned. I also want to invite you to stay in touch with us. You see information on the screen, but I also invite you to stop by our Civic Tech Pavilion that's right outside of this hallway in order to continue conversations with all of the speakers. All of them are presented at the Civic Tech Pavilion, so you can ask them additional questions if you have any. And lastly, after this panel, we're going to continue, or Tom is going to continue with the conversation around energy transitions and energy communities. That's also include the component on how to participate and engage those communities. So stay behind, and thank you again to the speakers and all of you, the participants.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.